Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. In a moment we're going to get into some education data, particularly graduates. We'll refer to them as completers in United States higher education for the fiscal year, the academic year 2023 to 2024. And in particular, we'll look at the number of degrees awarded or earned by men and women in total and within specific fields of study. But what's different about today's is I'm actually going to show you, before we get into the data, how you can get these data sets downloaded for your own use, whether you're interested in education in particular or just large data sets. There's a ton of information to be had and to be found here. So in a moment we'll get to gender differences between graduation numbers and rates across the United States. I'll tell you how we define what it is that we want to retrieve. So you'll be able to download the data file from my author site if you want, or as I said, I'm going to actually show you how to go in and get this type of information, this data from iPads yourself. So it might be a good idea if you wanted to just kind of save this video as a reference. You can come back to it later if you're not in a situation in which you can follow along as we go. But one of my goals is always to help people understand facts, data, research, and this is again a great source where you can dive in and find just about anything that you want regarding the United States colleges and universities. So let's go ahead and start having a look here. Okay, so I've put a link to this website here, this web page, as the first line in this video's description. If you click on that link or put it into your web browser, it will bring you here, and this is the iPads, as I mentioned. That's the Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. I know it's a lot of words, but this is the official reporting site or the data storage site for all of the colleges and universities in the United States that they report to the government. This is the source of all of that information. As far as more about iPads, I have done a video that explains a little bit more about this in detail. I'll see if I can put an overlay here just so you can recognize it, and the link for that as well. It's when I did the video about, what was that about? Oh, the number of programs that are available in gender and feminist studies across the country. So there's a little bit more detail as far as the background of iPads and this SIP classification that we'll talk about here in just a moment if you want to dive in a little bit further as more of a larger example. So once we get to this page, we want to select the universities and the colleges that we want to look at. In particular, we're going to look at the number of degrees awarded or earned by students, and specifically bachelor's degrees in the United States by public and private universities. So we're going to get rid of all of the two-year type degrees and things like that, right? So let's start to filter this down. I recommend start here, click on or hover over the by groups here, and then click on Easy Group. This is going to help us filter down to just the institutions that we want to see. So data collection, the most recent data available are for the year 2024. I believe iPads will start to update a lot of their information for the following 2025 academic year sometime this summer. They're about a year behind a lot of times on their reporting. So here we want to select only those that are in the United States. I don't know that anything's going to change here, but that gives us 5,912 different institutions in the United States. We also want to break this down even further because we don't want to get all of the beauty salons, the two-year trucking schools, and things like that. We want to limit it to only institutions that are awarding bachelor's degrees. So we're going to do that first by clicking on sector here, and then we're going to select those public 4-year or above and the private nonprofit 4-year and above. For those of you who are international viewers here, in the United States we have public universities, right? So state universities, University of Illinois, every different state has several different public institutions in that state, and then we also have the private ones. Those are your Ivy Leagues. Harvard is one. Where I got my where I went to grad school is a private school, DePaul University in Chicago, right? So we're going to collect data from both of those. I am staying away from the for-profit universities. I'll do an entire video about those at some point, but we are absolutely staying away from the for-profit universities, right? Okay, and once we have those, I'm going to click on search. And it's going to list all of those different institutions that we have at this point. It's narrowed it down to 2,397. Okay, so we can see all of those here, and we can scroll on to the different pages if we want. And now we're going to select the variables that we want. So I'm going to click on Browse or Search Variables. And it's going to give us this list right here. Each of those will expand. For today, as I mentioned, we're going to look at degrees awarded and or earned by students, right? So we're going to go here and look at completions. IPEDS refers to those as completions. But as you can see, there are a lot of different options here. We can get financial information, outcome measures. Those include things like Pell Grants, cohorts with degree granting institutions by Pell status, and we can even drill down a lot of these even further to specific years and things. And that's why I said this source has thousands of different reports that are available, especially when we start to break it down to, what specific genders do you want, what specific racial composition do you want in your data. But for our purpose, we're going to go to completers, and we're going to look at this one here, 2020 SIP classification. Now, I'll briefly describe what SIP CIP means, but I'm not going to get into a lot of detail like I did in that previous video that I mentioned a couple of moments ago. So that's what we want. We want awards or degrees conferred by program, and then we can break it down by demographics if we like. So I'm going to click on that. And this is the 2019 to 2020 academic or current year. And the reason it says that is because several years ago, the federal government and IPEDS changed the SIP classification codes, right? So because I clicked on the 2019 to 2020, those are the current code standards by which we will start to investigate. So I am in fact going to select the most recent year of the data are available. That's 2023 to 2024. I could get multiple years here if I want. I will say if you do go in here and you start playing around, the system is a bit quirky. If you start to add multiple years in here, your data file is going to look like shit. I'll just be honest. I would recommend download separate individual academic years if you're going to do this. Try not to get too carried away with the number of variables that you're downloading in individual files, because it will start to get very difficult and challenging just to work with the system and the files that they return themselves. So here we're going to click on first or second major. We're only going to look at students' first major. So again, for those here in the United States, many students, they have two majors. They may have a first major in psychology and a second major in some form of business or finance. For some reason or another, they might want two majors, right? We're only going to look at students' first major. I don't feel like dealing with larger data sets working on second majors at this point. And I don't know what the percentage is. I'm guessing maybe 30% of students have a second major, maybe 20, 25%. I don't know. So we select first major. I'm going to save here. Now, all three of these that we're working on right here, you have to make selections for each of them. Otherwise, it's going to tell you that you're stupid. So here we want to go to SIP classification code. And as we can see, these CIP codes, all of these different fields of study have their own individual CIP code. So as we can see, whether it's Parks and Rec, philosophy, or business, or history, they all have their own individual CIP, SIP codes. If we break these down even more, for example, if we look at education, the education CIP, we can break that down even more into a 4-digit and break these down even further into 6-digit CIPs. So you can see even within education, we are going to have dozens, if not 100 or more different CIPs, depending on how far down we want to drill into these. I don't care about all of these individual ones. Again, that's why I say, if you want to go in here and start just clicking everything that you want, everything, you're going to run into a lot of issues. So we're just going to keep it pretty simple at this time. And we'll still get a very interesting look at some of this data. So here's what I'm going to do. I want to select all of the two-digit CIP SIP codes for all of these different fields of study here. I don't want to worry about all of these ones down here underneath natural resources and conservation. I just want the main major category, okay? So I'm going to click here to select all of the two-digit codes or categories. Click on Save there. Now what I want here is I'm going to look at only men and women. As I said, this is, again, where I said you can get thousands of different files if you want. The thing is, you have to select, you can get only Asian men and Asian women. You can get, whites, blacks, non-resident aliens, right? So you can break this down just about any way that you want. But again, if you're going to do this, just be careful on how many selections you're making because your data files will come back very convoluted, okay? But we want the total of number of men and the total number of women. I'm going to go ahead and, I believe we're here. Nope. Award level. We've got one thing. I'm going to say we want to look at only bachelor's degrees. I'm not going to look at master's degrees, doctoral degrees, professional health degrees, anything like that. Again, we're just going to keep this simple. If you do want multiple files of the same, or layers of data, again, I highly recommend get them in multiple files and start working with them in that manner. Okay. So we only want to look at bachelor's degrees, so I'm going to save that. We made selections for all three of these in step 2. As I mentioned, you have to make selections for each one of these, the field, the major, and the award level. We want to look at only men and women here. So I'm going to click on now that we've made our selections. I'm going to click on continue. And now it's just going to show us everything that we're looking at here, right? So it's going to show us everything we want. It's actually going to tell us what state all of those institutions were in, the sector of the institution, if you remember, the public and the private, and then the grand total for men, the grand total for women, see? And then for each of the different CIPs, it's going to give us those broken down for total men and total women for each of those as well. So I'm going to go ahead here. Everything looks good, I think. I'm going to click on continue. And then it's going to bring us up a little page right here. I would not change any of these little buttons here. Leave everything just the way that they are. And this is where we can actually download a file into, I believe they're going to return a CSV file, and it may come in a zip file, zip folder as well. So don't make any changes here. We're going to click on continue. And here's where we can download our file. I'm just going to go, all right, yeah, let's go ahead and put it in this file, and I'm going to say video download. Now give me just a moment, and I will open that up. Okay, and here we go. Let's see how we're doing on this here. Okay, this looks fine. So again, this is the file that I just named. It did, in fact, come as a CSV file. I just, as I mentioned, named it video download. What we can see here is the unit ID in column A. This is a unique identifier for each of the different institutions that are in the data file. These are, right here, all of the institutions that were included, and that comes out to 2,398, as you can see here. So it includes all of them, all with their own unique ID here. We have here the total number of bachelor's degrees awarded or earned for men, right? So in men in their first major. So this is for, let's for example look at Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College gave 184 degrees to men in this academic year. They gave 237 to women in that academic year. Okay, let me put on here let me just clean this a little bit. Let's set the little filter here. Let's set the filter, and just so I can keep things a little bit clean myself, we're going to freeze the panes up on top, freeze the top row. And if we go down through all of these, you can see, again, this right here, column C, is all of the degrees that they gave to men. Column D is all of the degrees that they gave to women. As we continue to move in the columns over to the right, we will see that it breaks it down by field of study or zip code, as I had mentioned. So communication and journalism for men is right here. Communication and journalism for women is right here. I'm not going to get into this a whole lot because we're going to just kind of break this down and see some of the overall interesting things from this. So what I did was, in fact, let's look at one just as an example. Let's go into, everybody knows Harvard, right? So if we want to look at Harvard University, we can single them out, say, all right, how many degrees did they give out? Looks like they were actually very even with the number of degrees earned, bachelor's degrees we're talking at this point, right, between men and women, very, very similar. But if we wanted, we could look at Harvard University and how many degrees in every different field of study did those men and women earn, right? So that's what we're going to take a look at here in just a moment. Again, the link is down there for you to get to, and now you know how to get the data that you can download by yourself from iPads. And we'll also put a link where if you want, you can go directly to my website. I'll put an overlay here and download this exact copy yourself. I just put it up on my website. You can download a copy for free. If you want to leave a small donation just for the effort or to support the channel, that's very, very generous of you and very much appreciated. But again, you go download it directly from your iPads if you want, get it from my website if you want. But I'm going to leave this raw data file where it is for right now. Give me just a moment. I'm actually going to pull up a file that I was working with a little bit, and we'll take a look at what's interesting about it. Okay? Let's take a break. I'll be right back. All right, here's what I did with that data file. Just some very simple stuff. The first thing I did was I just went across, and for each of the men's and women's columns, just because this is the way that my brain works, I'm very, very visual, I color-coded them simply blue and pinkish for men and women, just to kind of keep it straight in my own mind. So I did that. I went all the way down to the bottom here, and I gave them all totals, right? So we can see the total number of men that earned degrees and the total number of women that earned degrees. And we see that collectively between the two of them, again, this is for the 2023-2024 academic year, bachelor's degrees that were earned in the United States. Right? So we can see that 42% of those were earned by men, 58% of those earned by women. We have the totals here. And then across all of these columns, we can see within each individual, for example, if we SIP description or SIP code, we can see that agricultural, animal, plant, veterinary science, 36% of those were men, 64% were women, and we can go down the line and look at all of those as we go. Now this is it's still very cumbersome. This still has all of the raw data in it. One thing I was interested in is any changes over time. So I actually did the same thing for the 2019 to 2020 academic year. And honestly, there was really nothing, no major changes between them. So I just figured, you know what, I'm not going to dive into this. Nothing really has changed in the last couple of years, other than there are about maybe, I forget what it is, maybe 20 or 30,000 fewer degrees earned by men, and women, I think, that are earning a little bit more now. So men are earning fewer now, but by a very small margin. Women are earning more now by a very small margin. I hope I said that properly. So nothing really has changed too dramatically since the 4 years prior to what we're looking at now. So I just kind of like left that. I didn't want to dig into it too much. And then I was also interested in looking at, okay, what might be the differences between public and private institutions? And again, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it, but I was looking at, okay, here's only the public institutions. Nothing stuck out at me immediately, so I didn't dive into that too far either. But the main thing that I want to look at is I just adjusted, kind of moved everything around right here, filtered it for only men, and this is where things get interesting. So let's take a look at this. Pause and have a look if you want. I'm going to sort this by the proportion of men earning degrees in the fields of study in the data file. What we can see here is men earning the fewest percentage, by percentage now, in family and consumer sciences, they're 12%. Library sciences, men are 15%. Some of these are going to get interesting here in just a moment, but health professions and related programs, men are 15%. Again, remember, this is only bachelor's degrees in the United States. Men also very low on public administration and social service. In education, as we would expect, right? In fact, let me just highlight that one right now. We talk all the time about that we don't have any male teachers, and there's a male shortage in education. And we can see right here, that's because every year men are earning only 17% of the bachelor's degrees in education in the United States. And if you remember when we were filtering to get the data that we wanted from iPads, we could actually drill this down into different types of education, right? Childhood education, special education, maybe education administration, right? So if we wanted to, we could dig into this even further and see, okay, now even within education, where are any larger gaps, or where is it maybe specific fields in education? Where is there a little bit of equilibrium between the two genders, right? So we just took the larger bucket for each of these. We can see in psychology, again, I've done videos, several videos on both education and psychology, and the lack of men in those. But we can see in psychology, 4-year bachelor's degrees, 20% men. And who's going to go into graduate schools and get their master's and their doctorate degrees in psychology or psychology clinical type related fields? It's going to be the women. All right. Let's flip this around. Again, you're welcome to download this from myself or go through the steps, get it from iPads you want, manipulate, do whatever kind of analyses or just kind of like descriptive looks at it that we're doing right here. But let's look at the largest. Where do men dominate in bachelor's degrees earned? It's mechanics and repair is the highest. Men are 88% there. Transportation materials moving, men are 84%. Engineering and engineering-related technology, men are 83%. Construction trades, they're 81%. In the high 70s, we've got for men military technologies, computer and information science, and engineering degrees at the bachelor level, 75%. So here's where we can see exactly where it is that men are dominating in some fields, women dominating in other. I'd love to hear your experience, hear your thoughts. Anything surprising you here? Let me just scroll through this just a little bit. Go ahead and take a pause here if you want. And let me just kind of give the whole list from top to bottom here so you can see where everything is. Again, feel free to take a look if you want to have a pause. All right, so I've got my notes here. And as I mentioned, some things maybe more and more intuitive, that men are overrepresented in things like mechanics, transportation, construction, computer science, and engineering, while women are dominating psychology, education, public administration, health professions. But one of the things notes that I made here is that, well, let's take a look here at health. Where did we see health? Health professions. Look at the sheer volume, the number of degrees awarded in health professions and related programs. 30,565, and only 15% of those are men. In fact, let's sort these by count from highest to lowest, and we can see where is health. Right here. Health, it was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th highest number of awards were given in that SIP classification. Only 15% are men. This is where we're seeing women, the nursing, doctors, dentists, all of those, whether it's osteopathic or allopathic, anything to do with cancer research, things like that. This is where they start. We start with them being heavily favored. Women earning 85% of degrees in a very, very large field. Another one that I noticed was, actually this one is, we looked at this before. Let's go to computer and information science. Likewise, and listen, take what you will from this. We could say all day long, and I do have my issues with the number of, or the lack of men in psychology and education. I think that's a huge fucking problem. But when we talk about things, different types of fields, some of it doesn't bother me as much. The health stuff, I don't know if that bothers me as much as the mental health fields, like psychology. But things like that, right? So men are, in fact, dominating some of these very large fields. We see over 88,000 degrees awarded in computer and information science, and 23%, only 23% of which are women. Men are 77%. Let's take a look at some of these other ones that are big discrepancies here. Visual and performing arts, I think we might typically expect that, 65% of those, although it is a large field, 65% of those are women. Right. So some of these not nearly as, I don't think, decisive, I don't know if that's the right word, as mental health and health, things like that. So anyway, I'll leave that here, and I'm curious to see if you're interested in more videos like this. I think what I'm going to do is, for my own personal interest, I'm interested in degrees awarded at the doctorate level and the professional level. So those are the ones that are becoming doctors and therapists and earning their PhDs in different fields. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this same process, but pull out only those doctorate degrees and give that breakdown over on Patreon. So if you're interested in seeing that, you can join us over there. Got some free stuff up there and a couple levels of membership, so let me put that up there for those of you who are members. Look for that coming soon. If you have any questions, let me know. I like teaching people how to get their own data, and this is, again, some of how I come up with my ideas. If this is helpful for you, please let me know. I know it's very different than what I've done in the past, but I do like doing these kinds of educational type things as well. So let me know what you think. Those links, again, are down in the description. I'll see you all soon.